Okay guys, here we go. We're going to talk about monopolistic competition in this video, and then in the next video we'll move on to oligopoly. Both are from Chapter 11. Okay, so the characteristics or the traits of monopolistic competition. These are the four big ones. Okay, so we have a large number of sellers, but not an infinite number. We have differentiated products. The differentiated products are going to give us the downsloping demand curve, because in order to sell additional units, you're going to have to lower the price. So increasing Q means decreasing P. An easy entry and exit, but not free, right? So there's some cost, so that'll slow things down, but you can still get in and out. And then there's going to be advertising, which is going to have an impact on our cost curve. So we've got average total cost, and if we've got advertising, then we're going to have to be somewhere not at minimum average total cost, okay? All right, so you might be wondering, how do we know whether a firm, how do we know what market structure we're in? So if you've got pure competition here and monopoly here, right? So we've kind of said that monopolistic competition is here and oligopoly is around there someplace. But where are these, where do they all work? Well, there's two methods that we can use. So you can do the four firm concentration ratio, which is where you take the four biggest firms and you add up everything that they make, okay? So their output. So let's say one firm makes 100 and another makes 200 and another makes 300 and another makes 400. And then you add that together and you divide by the total output of the industry. Okay, so let's say the total industry makes 10,000. Okay, so that means that we have 1,000 over 10,000. Okay, so your four firm concentration ratio is going to be 1/10 or 10%. So that's going to be a pretty low concentration, as opposed to if you've got one firm that does 9,000 and then the next three each do 100, that would be very close to monopoly. That would be really high. The other is the Herfindahl index. So that now what you do is you add up the squares of all the market shares. So you square the market share, which is going to be a percentage. You square it. So this should be a superscript 2. But anyway, if you've got one firm that has, say, 10%, which you square, that's going to be 100, okay? And then the next is 9%, and so in theory you'd be able to get all of them, because market shares will always have to add up to 100%, okay? So what that's going to do is basically, if you've got in the four firm concentration ratio, if you have four firms, one of them is huge and the next three are pretty small, it's going to look the same mathematically. Whereas in the Herfindahl index, because you're squaring that one giant one, it'll feel much less concentrated. I'm sorry, it'll feel much more concentrated. It'll reflect a little bit more of the accurate portrayal. So here are some examples in various industries. So asphalt paving has a pretty, relatively high, I guess, Herfindahl index, at least on this list. But you can kind of read that on your own time. Here are some, this is pulled off of Wikipedia, or some other website. This isn't super duper, scientific or anything. But if you're going below 100, then you're going to be highly competitive. That's going to be more like pure competition. Monopolistic competition is going to be between 100 and 1,500. You're going to be an oligopoly between 1,500 and 2,500. Monopoly above 2,500. The top, of course, the square of 100% market share would be 10,000. So maybe this is more like oligopoly. It's just kind of difficult to tell, and economists they're not of one mind as to where these break points are. But certainly if you're up in like the 5,000 neighborhood, then you're definitely going to have a really high concentration, either a concentrated oligopoly or a monopoly, or it'll start to feel like a monopoly. All right, so price and output in monopolistic competition. You're going to see that demand is going to be highly elastic. So you are going to have a downsloping demand curve, but typically the demand curves that you see are going to be sort of gently sloping demand curves. In the short run, you can have either profit or loss. You are, surprise, surprise, going to produce where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. In the long run, though, also going to have normal profit here because entry and exit is still pretty easy. We're going to be neither productively nor allocatively efficient, but the best part about this is product variety. So we like having lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of different choices, and monopolistic competition gives us all those choices. So here's our graph, our sort of gently downsloping demand curve, more steeply marginal revenue curve, our typical average total cost. So in this example, we're obviously making a profit, okay, because we have the same deal, marginal revenue and marginal cost intersection gives us our quantity, okay, and then we draw our vertical line up. We have our intersection on the average total cost and our intersection at price. This is per unit profit, and then we multiply here, and that gives us our total profit. Okay, now if something happens and we either wind up with a downward shift of our demand curve, leftward shift, downward, decrease in demand, or if our average total costs rise, then we're still producing where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. That gives us this quantity. But now we have this negative difference, okay? So average total cost is higher than price at quantity Q2, and then that gives us this loss, okay? In the long run, this is where we're going to be. This is difficult to draw, but you should be able to do it. Okay, so produce where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. That gives us this quantity. But in the long run, firms will enter and exit just like just like pure competition in order to wipe out profit or loss, and the demand curve will be tangent to the average total cost curve, but not here, not at minimum average total cost, because marginal revenue equals marginal cost is not going to intersect here because we don't have a horizontal demand curve, okay? So you're going to be tangent to the left of minimum ATC, but tangent on the ATC line with demand, okay? So practice drawing that. It's a difficult thing to draw, but it is important to know how to graphically illustrate the long-run normal profit position of a monopolistically competitive firm. So we know that we are inefficient, okay? So we're both going to be productively inefficient and allocatively inefficient because price is going to be greater than, this should be minimum average total cost. You can produce on the average total cost curve, but it won't be at the minimum level. And allocatively efficient price is going to be greater than marginal cost. So we are definitely going to be inefficient in monopolistic competition. So you'll recall if we compare, remember that what we say efficiency is when it behaves like a purely competitive firm. So a purely competitive firm would have a horizontal demand curve, okay, and then the same marginal revenue curve, and we'd be right here. So a monopolistically competitive firm is going to charge a higher price, okay, so it's not going to charge P4, it's going to charge P3, and a lower quantity, okay, so just like monopolies, higher price, lower quantity, though the difference is a little bit less significant because of the gently downsloping demand curve that comes from the highly elastic products. Okay, so once again, inefficiency gives us lower quantity and higher price. Now we're going to have some excess capacity at minimum ATC. So we could make this, but there's going to be excess capacity. We could do Q4, but we're only going to make Q3. Now, product variety is really nice. We're constantly in a monopolistically competitive situation. We are managing price, product, and advertising. We want better differentiation because if you can convince your clientele that your product is different from all of the other ones, then they'll be willing to pay more. So that's why they're constantly advertising. The advertising is to convince you that the toothpaste that you're buying from Crest is really different from the toothpaste you're buying from Colgate. Because if you believe that, then they can charge more. Okay? Now, if you don't believe it, then maybe you buy the generic brand because you don't value that sort of hype. But obviously people do because they advertise and they're pretty good at it. So consumer benefits by a greater array of choices and better products. Once again, if you want to make a profit, then you want to gain more market power. Better products make other substitutes less good substitutes. If the substitutes aren't as good, then people are more likely to buy your thing. You can charge more and you can earn an economic profit for a longer period of time. All right, so we have brands in monopolistic competition and we have lots of variety, and that's a good thing. So that does it for monopolistic competition, okay? So we'll stop there and we'll pick up with our oligopoly portion later on.